what would be most useful for you in our conversation today?
Well, really, I have a really, I guess, ambitious goal score. Right now, I've taken the test once. I got a 144. My highest practice test was a 150, though, and my goal score for my dream school is a 160. So I have talked to a couple of different admissions offices at another alternative school where they said with my GPA they could accept a 153. And I know that my major areas of growth need to be like with logical reasoning. My best score with analytical reasoning though is like a -6. But with logical reasoning, I've gotten like -10 has been the best I've gotten. So I'm really just kind of looking for some tips. I found myself having like a 50-50 going back and forth between like the deductive reasoning questions, like when they're asking like what would be most strongly supported from the passage, I guess tips with that would be helpful actually.
Sure. So out of everything you mentioned, you want to focus on formal logic inference questions?
Yeah, I'm thinking so. And then maybe like where they're like specifically, let's say, resolving the discrepancy. That's also been a challenge. I found myself going back and forth with those questions as well. And when it comes to analytical reasoning, I've had the biggest struggle with when they're asking which answer best helps substitute to get the same result from the question. So that's my number one struggle with those.
Okay, so let's knock that one out first because it's actually very easy to address. So these are logic games, rule substitution questions, aka rule equivalency questions.
Okay.
And they seem tough because they appear infrequently, but they actually appear on nearly every exam, starting with exam 57 up to present. So if you want to target those and drill them, just do a bunch of them in a row, meaning do the setup for that logic game and then do only the rule substitution question in that game. Then do the next game's setup, then do only that question. I have a big list of those questions I can send you for every appearance from 57 up to present.
Wow, that would be awesome.
Sure. And if you do a bunch in a row, you'll see they're actually not so bad. They just only seem weird because they're infrequent.
Okay. And that is what happens. Like I noticed on my practice tests, I might have gotten them every 3 practice tests or so. And it's just kind of like, oh, what it throws me off, and I kind of get bogged down on those questions and don't have the opportunity to then maybe do another one because of just time and everything. So even though I do have extended time, I ended up getting an accommodation for my ADHD, so that's been helpful. And I've seen growth since that changed since that was approved. And so I'm looking forward to, being able to work with that when I retake the test in February.
Awesome. And you're timing yourself with the extra time?
Yes, I've started doing that. Yes.
Great. Fantastic. So keep that up and you'll see some improvement there. Now, with regard to the most strongly supported formal logic questions, those are not quite as frequent. You might not even see them on every single exam. And I think the key there is 2 things. One is that you want to diagram only when the situation warrants it. So lots of conditional statements, the same variables in multiple, indicating you could link things together in some way.
Okay.
Also, with this question type, you want to be aware that it's not must be true. It's most strongly supported, meaning that the conclusion that the inference doesn't have to be 100% supported. It could instead be 90 or 95% supported. Think of it like a reasonable assumption, but it may not be totally airtight.
So does that mean there would be an answer that is airtight and they would consider that one incorrect, possibly, or?
No, it wouldn't be there at all.
It wouldn't be there at all. Okay.
Because something that is a must is incredibly supported, but the word most gives you a little bit of wiggle room. So sometimes the answer will be a must, but it doesn't always have to be a must. In some cases, it could just be incredibly likely.
Okay, gotcha.
If it's formal logic, diagramming is the way to go. Otherwise, you may be looking for a paraphrase of all or one part of the stimulus or a combination of different parts.
Okay. Sub-questions. That's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, sure, of course. And then you also mentioned resolve the paradox, right?
Yes, that's correct.
So I find it kind of interesting in logical reasoning in general because you could easily take the same stimulus and with some modification, turn it into a variety of question types. So if there's someone who says these two seemingly contradictory things can't both be true, therefore one of them is wrong, they are failing to consider that there could be some alternative explanation for why those could both coexist. So for example, someone got a 150 and they got into Harvard Law. How could that possibly be the case? One of those two things is false. Turns out the parents of the kid who got a 150 also gave a several $1 million donation.
I was going to say nepotism?
Right, exactly. So that is new information that could help to resolve that apparent discrepancy between the relatively lower score getting into a top school.
Okay. And so does that mean like if there's, I guess with the discrepancy I'm having, I did notice that I would go back and forth between two questions and I would make an assumption early. And so I wonder if there's something that would help me not make that assumption and kind of just stick with the information. Are there any, like, it's just a matter of practicing to stick with what they're giving me? Because I did notice Khan Academy, I'm sorry to interrupt, Khan Academy, they did say like, I made an extra assumption about that if this was my answer choice, so.
Yeah, you have to, of course, stick with what's stated in the stimulus. And a lot of that is simply practice and getting a sense of what is reasonable to assume, what's not reasonable. So LSAC will assume reasonable to be common sense world knowledge, like the days of the week, for example, or the order of months in a year. Those are things they assume that in general people know, or that like if it's raining, that means water's falling from the sky, or that people are likely to have umbrellas, things like that. But when it comes to these apparent discrepancies, it's really figuring out some way that both of those things could be true. And you might prephrase or predict one potential answer when there are, in fact, multiple possibilities. So maybe the person who got a 150, their parents didn't give a donation, but that person hacked into the system and changed their grades or something like that.
Right. Okay.
There are a variety of ways it could happen.
It is. Right. It's absolutely. It's not that it's impossible. It's that it's just highly unlikely, or that something outrageous would have had to have made it so.
Right. Or if you want to consider also there are just multiple potential explanations to explain that apparent discrepancy, and the one you predict may not be the only one. But you also have to recognize that there is no such thing on the LSAT as a true paradox. Just like in the real world, there aren't actually paradoxes. We just don't have complete information. But the things that exist, I mean, they exist. They're given.
Okay. That makes sense. No, let me ask you this. Realistically, have you seen any of your students like after, or I know maybe over an extended period of time, but taking the test in February, I took it for the first time in September. I kind of got burned out and have not gotten back into my steady study routine yet. Maybe last week I kind of got back into the groove, but as far as to the next 3 months that I have, do you think it's realistic to think that I could jump from a 144 to at least like a 155 or so?
That's entirely possible. It's not an unreasonable increase that you're looking for. It's just a question of the work you put in and what you change about your prep from last time around.
Okay, and I did all self-study through like Khan Academy, their lessons and a couple of your free videos online and stuff like that. But I'm thinking that, I'm just wondering if it's more of, like you said, doing a bunch of the same questions back to back, if that's what I need to try to focus on first. And of course, I would love to do one of your courses, so I'm trying to make that happen as well. So, yeah, I appreciate those responses, actually.
Yeah, of course. I'm glad to help. And one last thing I want to add there is, if you're below 150, there's still some fundamental things to work on. So I wouldn't jump into practice questions and review of them immediately. As you're doing, you already mentioned a few areas you want to focus on: most supported, resolve the paradox, rule substitution. There may be some other areas as well that you want to give extra attention to. And so I would suggest do some work on the foundation, reviewing relevant videos on those topics or relevant textbook chapters on those topics before you do questions of that type, because then you'll get more out of your practice.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I do need to go back. I know you say, I've heard a lot of your podcasts that says like try to review as many of the wrong questions that you've got as possible. So I've only actually fully gone through 2 of my practice tests. I'm taking like 10. So I do have some things to review that I got wrong and things like that. I'm hoping that'll give me a good outline on what to focus on.
Great. Fantastic. Well, it's a pleasure connecting with you, Ayana. Before we sign off, What would you say is the biggest insight you got from our call today?
Today, I would say, honestly, just the idea of being able to just think it's okay to do the same question type back to back. I'm thinking I need to learn a little bit of everything, but no, I really should focus more. I'm thinking now you've inspired me to focus more on these specifics first, and then, do practice tests from there.
Awesome. Great. Well, glad I was able to help. Please keep in touch and let me know if I can help in any way as you move forward.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
For everything you do.
My pleasure. Thanks. Thanks for tuning into the show. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already to be notified of new episodes as I release them. And feel free to reach out if you need anything at all as you move forward with your prep. I'm happy to help however I can. In the meantime, I'll wish you all the best and take care.